One of the most important tools that you have to know when you start into collaborative software development is Git. In this first video, we are gonna create your first repo on your own machine. But before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Lorenzo and I work as integration engineer for Cap4Lab. First step consists of creating a repository, but before we begin, what is a repository? A repository contains the evolution of your codebase that's inside of your computer, tracked tile by tile and edit by edit. The repo itself, moreover containing the codebase you are developing, it contains a little folder that tracks every single update that you did time over time. To give you more context, I'm gonna show you the differences that are in between Git, the repository, your working directory, we are gonna see together what it consists of, and the staging area. So inside of your computer, there's a folder that's containing all of your code base, which means that the files that you're gonna create are inside of here physically, and this is the working directory. So basically, every single file that you're gonna create, edit, delete, is inside of it. When we are creating a repository through Git, a hidden folder is gonna be created in turn. So, moreover your files, here there's a hidden folder that's named .git. This .git folder contains all of the magic that keep tracks of the edits over your codebase, the evolution of the story, because the repository contains the story about your codebase, and all of the other information related to you and your coworkers. So basically, inside of the working directory, we saw that we have the files, the Git folder, and then we have the mechanism of the staging area. So the staging area acts like a mediator in between the files existing inside of your folder and the story that's tracked down by Git. So every single time we create an edit over the files, we are gonna create a commit. We are gonna see together what a commit consists of. But commit by commit, we are gonna track a storyline at all, that's composed of commits. Basically, at some point of the story, we are gonna create several branches, and these branches are, in a nutshell, the storylines which compose your repository. So now that we understood the mechanism behind Git, we are gonna see together how does it work with a concrete example. I have to be honest, we're gonna use the CLI, the command line interface. So why do I prefer to use the CLI instead of, for instance, Bitbucket, the GitHub desktop, or even the one provided by GitLab? Even though these instruments are pretty useful and they are complete of everything, you will become dependent by these instruments, which means that if you switch from one tool to another, for instance, you are committed to use GitHub on a daily basis, then suddenly you have a repository held by GitLab, you won't find the proper tool in the proper position. Instead, all of these tools are built upon Git. Git has all of the mechanisms we need in order to work properly. And all of these mechanisms you will see that are driven by commands executed through the CLI. Consider that even though the CLI is not as familiar as it might be the UX, the Git commands are pretty easy and short. The first one we are gonna see is to create the repository itself. So first of all, I'm gonna create a, how is it named, the thing that contains file, of course, the directory, sorry guys. I'm gonna create a C4L repo. I'm gonna inside of the folder itself. Now, the folder is empty. When I launch the command I was mentioning before, which is git init, here we go, it says I initialized empty Git repository in the mentioned folder. Here, I'll see nothing, but we were mentioning the hidden folder, which is Git. Indeed, if I run an ls-a, I will see here the hidden folder Git. If I go under the folder and I run again an ls, I will see several contents related to the Git working off. Now, I'll go back to the main root folder, because that's what we are looking for, and we will see that here there's a label named main. Do you remember the story about the commits, the evolution of the story? So basically we have a main branch once the Git repository is being created. So that will be the first branch we are working on. But so far, I have nothing to commit. So basically what are we gonna do is to create the first file. When I create a file, and I'm gonna do with nano, just for simplicity, and I will name it file1.txt, I will write something like hi, I hit Ctrl X, then Y, enter. I just created a file, a text file containing one row. So if I run an ls, the file exists inside of the folder of my computer, and this is what I mentioned before, the working directory. So now, how can I let Git track all of the edits that I'm gonna do over the file? Because of course, once the file is inside of the working directory, Git understands that there's something new over there, but it's not yet under track. So basically, to understand the status of the thing, we have to run the command git status. And this command gives me back a lot of information. First, it says on which branch I am. Then, no commits yet. It's an empty repository so far. And here we go, we have an untracked file. It says use git add file to include in what will be committed. And here we go. We have the file1.txt. In this way, we understand that the file is inside of the working directory, but it's not yet under the tracking of Git. To do so, we are gonna add it through the command git add file name, which in our case is file1.txt. And here we go. Now we are gonna to discover the third actor that I was mentioning at the beginning of the video, which is the staging area. So now, if I run again git status, I will see again that I am on the branch main, no commits yet, but here we have changes to be committed. Here we see a different phrase here, which is use git rm ---- cached file to unstage. So basically, when we add files and edits through the command git add, we are adding not only the file itself, if it wasn't tracked so far, but also all of the little rows that are gonna changing inside of the files themselves. So basically, the staging area, it's like a sort of limbo in between the working directory and the story of the repository. To get through, I will create the first commit. And basically, to do like so, I will have to write down git commit. I hit enter, and here appears a pretty important output. It says, please enter the commit message for your changes. Line starting with sharp will be ignored, and an empty message, aborts the commit. Here we understand a pretty important little thing, that each commit has to have a message inside. This is pretty important because each single edit that you are gonna do and you're gonna commit inside of the repo has to have a meaning. This because, first of all, it's to remind yourself why have you added the code base in a proper manner or in a such way, and more important, to let the other coworkers that are working with you to understand why would have you done that. So now, what I do is to say semicolon word quit, and it says aborting commit due to an empty commit message. So it's mandatory to write down a message. There's a pretty easy peasy way to do like so, and it consists of running git commit -m, which stands for please git commit with the following message. That's gonna be encapsulated in double quotes, and I'm gonna write something like adding file1 to the story. I hit enter, and here we go. We see main, which is the name of the branch in this case, root commit, because it's the first commit ever done inside of the story of the repo. This weird hexadecimal number, we are gonna choose that as well, and the message that I wrote so far. One file changed, one insertion, and it created the mode for the file1.txt. This mode is related to the permissions that this file has. So now, we said that this is the first commit that we created so far. And how can I understand how the story is evolving inside of the repo? To do like so, there's a command named git log, and here we go. We see the only one commit, that has this weird enlarged hexadecimal number. Head, that is a pointer, is the pointer that we navigate through the story. It's like a sort of, let's say, time machine, but in this case it's pretty useful to deep dive and to drive instead of the commits that are gonna build up the story. The branch, that is main. Then here we go with the author, that's me, with my details. The date, including the time when this commit is being created. And then the message. So now we understood how to create our first repo, how to commit changes. We understood so far what is a branch. And another pretty important point is that how could we identify each commit instead of a repo? The hexadecimal number we see here is unique per each commit, which means that Git takes track of each commit through an hexadecimal number, and it's provided directly by Git. So now, just to add more contents and to understand how the story evolves, I will add another file, and then name it file2.txt, let's say. Write something like hi there, save the file. Now I would say git status. It says that's a new untracked file, and to do what we did so far, I'm gonna add it, such as like file2, and this time I'm gonna edit again the file 1. So I will open again the file 1 in the proper way, because I forgot the extension. Here we go. Hi, second line, Ctrl+X, save. Now, if I do again git status, we see a little bit of differences in between. Here I have changes to be committed because we staged, instead of the staging area, the file 2. But the file 1 is yet to be added. I have two options. Again, I can restore, so that the second row that I wrote down so far, it's gonna be deleted. Otherwise, I can add it. I'm gonna add the file 1, but this add has not to be intended as I'm adding the file. Instead, I'm just adding the second row. You have to know that Git takes track of the edits not according to adding the file to the commit. Instead, it calculates the differences that are in between the previous commit and the current one. So basically, it keeps track of the lines that are gonna be changed. So I'm gonna add the file, add the commit, saying adding files and edits, and here we go. As we could see, to file changes to insertions. If I'm gonna check the story of the repository, it's gonna be evolving, such as like with git log. So here I see the first commit ever, the one we did before, and here we have the second one, again with a new hash, which is the hexadecimal number, the second message, and we see that head is pointing to this last commit. Because when we start to create commits over a branch, the head is following the current checked out branch. The checkout mechanism is another thing that we're gonna see in the second part of the video. Before we get through the checkout mechanism and also understanding how we can move through the story of the repo, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. With my coworkers, I'm gonna create several videos related to Git, and if you are willing to understand and deep dive into this important tool, turn on the notification to not lose track of any new incoming video. So, I was talking about checkout mechanism. In this situation, I'm gonna show you a little hint that's related to seeing the story with the proper lines. Because I was mentioning at the beginning of this story that repositories have lines that tracks down the edits that we did over the files. So I can use git log, but I'm gonna add one little flag, which is --graph. Here, on the left side of the screen, we see a line that's connecting the commits in between. So we understand another important thing, that commits tracks down, of course, the lines that are gonna changing in the meantime, author that did the commit message, the hash, of course the branch where the commit belongs to, but another thing is that commits in between has ancestors. So in our case, the commit that starts with 4b15a94 has as ancestor the commit starting with 47739c. Now, I was talking about checkout, I was talking about moving through the story. And here we go with the creation of a new branch. As far as we know, we are on the branch named main. Now, if I'm willing to create a new branch, I could, and I'm gonna do that with the command git checkout -b, and imagine that I'm willing to create test for my code base, so I'm gonna name it test, pretty easy. Before I hit enter, I would like to deep dive into the structure of this command. So checkout means, okay Git, please move the position of head, do you remember the pointer we were talking about? Okay, please move it, let it point out to another position. The position in this case is a branch named test, but it's not yet existing. So through the flag B, we are saying, okay, please move the head pointing to test, but please create it. So now I'm gonna hit enter, and what's going on here? I switch it to a new branch named test, and indeed, if I launch git log ---- graph, I see that a new label here appeared. Actually, head is pointing to test, and I can understand it through the arrow here in the middle. I can see here as well main, because actually test is just a label. We are gonna create the story of test with its new incoming commit once we register edits over this new branch. So now that we understood how does it work, the creation of a repo, the commits, the branches, how can we move of our repository, the next incoming topic, it will be the creation of different branches. How do they work? How do the edits are gonna change in the meantime? But this would be a story that we are gonna deep dive into the next video. So again, do not forget to subscribe to our channel, and we'll see together into the next one. See you!